Unanswered questions that I was excited to explore about Mufasa, I could tell you, but if I told you, I'd probably get taken off this film, so I can't do that. How did I get involved in telling the story of Mufasa? It probably started in 1993 or 94 when the VHS for The Lion King came out. I was helping my sister raise my two nephews, and back then you just put in a VHS and you play it and rewind it. And I probably watched this movie maybe like 80 times over the course of a summer and really fell in love with it. I thought it was something made for kids. I was maybe 14 myself. And every time we watched it, I found myself actually paying attention and really falling in love with the characters. And so when the script came my way, one, I was surprised it existed because I thought I knew everything about Mufasa, everything about the story of The Lion King. But our movie is a prequel, and so there was so much story that I didn't know about that I thought was charting new territory. You know, Mufasa is the king, the greatest king of the Pride Lands, and you assume he got that way just because he is. And I thought the studio and Jeff Nathanson, who wrote the script, did a great job of really exploring how people become great, you know, how people come to be these mythic figures that we look up to. I think you'll see a ton of familiar faces. You know, it is a prequel, but again, it's a prequel in the sense that, you know, these are all the same characters, but we're telling you how they came to be who they are. So we're literally going backwards. We're going back in time with so many of these characters. We're in the present as well, but we're also going back to tell, you know, who these characters were. Please expect musical numbers. Really wonderful musical numbers, I say.
Hakuna Matata, what a wonderful phrase. Hakuna Matata, ain't no passing craze.
The process of working with this technology on making this film, which is very new and hasn't been used to make many films. I could probably count them, you know, on my 10 fingers. It's exciting. You know, as storytellers, you know, we're always trying to figure out what the tools can allow us to do within these stories. And so for me, my memory of The Lion King is 2D animation. And yet looking at the things that Mr. Favreau did with the previous film in 2019, I saw some things that I thought were really interesting. As a kid, you watch The Lion King and you kind of imagine yourself walking through the savannah. You know, I grew up in Miami. You go to Disney World and you're walking through some of these rides and exhibitions and you feel like you might be there. I think with this technology, we can actually place audiences there. And I thought too, it was a really interesting way to take the aesthetic that we have, you know, in our films that are very different, like The Lion King, you know, where the Moonlight or Beale Street or Underground Railroad, and sort of bring some of that visual aesthetic to a story as mythic as this one. So it's been really cool. The energy of it is what we want to live up to. And it's amazing to see how expressive, you know, the characters are allowed to be, especially in the musical numbers. But also too, just like you mentioned Hamlet, really, really Baroque emotions presented for kids, you know, and handled with aplomb. And I felt like in this film, we had an opportunity to do some of those things, but do them fresh because we're not retelling a story that people know. Instead, we're filling in, you know, we're embellishing, we're building this foundation beneath this story people are familiar with. The way that we're allowed to work is a bit more fluid than the previous film was allowed to because technology, it just doubles and advances exponentially. It's like the Wild Wild West. We have people on our sets who every day are developing new techniques, new tools we can use to make these films. And so it reminds me of being in film school where the only limitations are your imagination. And we're imagining things within the world of The Lion King. And not that we have total control, but there's always a step that we can take to get to really magical and I think wonderful visuals in the telling of the story.